Hey, how you doing? I'm Jay Kaminski, and this is a little bit different video than the normal videos. This is basically giving you a rundown as to what video coaching review is. So it's something that I offer on my website, and you can see here on my website under the product section, there's video coaching review. And basically what it is you submit videos to me, and then it could be videos of you shooting. It could be videos of you, having form or tuning issues, form issues, training questions, things like that. Essentially, you submit a bunch of videos if it's of you shooting, and then I review your video like this on the computer screen, so you can see me talking. And then what I will do is I switch back and forth between full screen of me like this, and then I also will bring up a video of you shooting. And as you can see on the screen, my cursor is showing my lovely wife here. And basically, I will review your video. And you can submit questions, like form questions, tuning questions, training questions, anything like that. I'll answer the questions in this video, and then I can critique your form or critique what you're looking for help on. So essentially this is how it works. And the way that you submit the videos is I prefer them all to be in one video like this, where if I show you the cursor here and I drag it across, you can see it's multiple views in one video here. And this allows me to go quickly from shot to shot without having to delay. But if you don't have the ability to stitch all the videos together, you can just submit all the videos, and then I have the actual files, so I can do things like this. Now, again, this is my wife. She's shot 5 times. This is her 5th session shooting. Has not shot very much. And so I'm going to critique her so you can get an idea of how it goes. But what's nice, when I have the actual file like this, I can go frame by frame and I can see all sorts of form things that are happening that you wouldn't normally see if it was playing in real speed like it is now. So like that, you can see a difference when I go frame by frame as opposed to letting it play in real time. So having the actual files helps a lot, and if you have questions, this is when I would answer them, depending on the type of question that it was. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give a video coaching review mock as if my wife submitted it for me to review, and that way you can get an idea of how it actually goes. So usually I start the video in full screen, and then I will switch to this when I'm talking about form, and if I'm looking to talk about something specifically like an anchor, I will zoom in full screen like this so you could see it better. Also, things to think about and consider is if you have a question specifically about a form issue, you would want to submit me a close-up of that view. So right now, this is a front-on view, then there is a behind view, and then a behind the archer view, so from behind the shoulder, and if you can, get an overhead view. Something along this line. This is just me standing on a stump behind her. This is also a good view as well. Now, in front of you may be important, or a close-up of your release or your anchor. It all depends on the individual particular video. So let's get started. Like I said, my wife has shot a whole 5 times, basically. Not 5 arrows, but 5 sessions of shooting between recurve and barebow. She's very new in the sport, so please keep that into consideration, and I will be very nice. So we will get started here. So as I can see her, she's doing all of these adjustments, and you can see lots of movement going on that you don't see in top-level archers, but this is because she's very, very new and still learning much of what is going on. So what I would suggest here is there's a bit an over-exaggeration of a depression. Let me move my video out of the way a little bit, make it a little smaller. This is a new computer that I'm doing it on. So if you look here, her shoulder, she's a little bit over-depressed here on the shoulder. Here it's natural earlier on in the shot as she stands up and takes her breath. but then as she reaches down, you can see her push into the grip here. And what that does is it sets the shoulder in a good position, but then you can see that she has this rocking going on right before she lifts the bow. And that is going to, it's not going to cause issues, but what it can do when she gets very proficient at this is this can cause you to not recognize when there are changes going on. Like say if your shoulder was just this much higher than normal, you wouldn't be able to recognize it because not only are you just lifting the bow, but there's this whole shifting going on from here all the way up. And you can see her entire rib cage shifting from here down all the way up, right? And then she goes into the draw. The draw and all that stuff and the end position is really good. There's no issue here. We have the divot here on whatever joint that is. I forget the name of it. But her position ends up being quite good. It's just that initial pickup from this position to this position. So if she were to stay more neutral and level here and set and then lift and go into setup and drawing, that's when you'll notice a change in these positions. Again, she's new and this is not something she is comfortable with yet. So it's absolutely to be expected, and all of this will go away with just time behind the bow. So we will continue forward. You can see her wrist gets in a really good position at the end of the shot. A little bit earlier in the shot, you can see it being flatter, and down here, you can actually see it being bent this direction because she has her arrow pointing at the target like this instead of having the arrow pointing to the left of the target like I suggest in the form series in set position. Again, this is all new stuff, and it's all nitpicking little details. So as she goes from there, she then pulls back with a bent wrist and then gets it into a good position once she finally gets into anchor. So what I would suggest is when she is setting her fingers on the string down here is to automatically bend your wrist from this position instead of being bent like this, to bend this way in the hook, and then that way it's bent and it stays nice and bent the whole time, as opposed to starting like this to have to then do this. It makes everything more fluid, and again, it lends itself to noticing when there are slight changes in the form while it is happening in real time. Again, something new and totally expected. The end result is great. So that can be achieved through, like I said, bending the wrist this way, which also you can do as I've covered in my form series, specifically in the hook and grip video in set position. I talk about taking your index finger and your thumb and stretching them far apart like this. And when you do that, your wrist bends this direction, which is correct when you're like this. Now, I can't bend my wrist this way without these 2 points shrinking. So if they're stretched as far apart as I can, and I try to bend my wrist the other way, I have to close the gap between here and here. Ready? It closes. So that's one way to prevent it. Another way is to simply, instead of being here, where my wrist is broken and my arrow and everything is in line, I bend my wrist the opposite way, and now the arrow is pointing to the left of the target, as you can see. The cat's behind me here on the stand. So that is would be a suggestion on how to help fix that wrist position. Now keep in mind, these video coaching reviews run about 20 minutes long, give or take. So any questions in video reviewing that I can do, I do my best to fill the time answering questions about tune or bow setup, things like that. I'm always happy to do. Some people will write to me their actual questions through text message, through the through email, or they'll actually just sit in front of the camera and record themselves talking about, just their background about themselves and how things are going for them, and things they're struggling with, things they wish was better. Just giving me some more information, and so that way I can help guide this person. Like if my wife was asking me, hey, I want to get serious, I want to get good, I'd be like, good, shoot more than 5 times, get out there and shoot a lot of arrows. So a lot of this, movement that we see as she's shooting goes away. You can see her set her hips, drop her chest, lift the bow, and then adjust her wrist, get her elbow set, all of these things. So she's going through check, 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 and she feels a bit mechanical, feels a bit like a robot, right? In the beginning of the sport of archery, that is normal, that is okay, and that is absolutely acceptable. But as you progress in this actual sport of archery, it goes from black and white steps to a big giant grayscale blending, okay? And that is what the top archers do and what the top archers look like. It looks like grayscale. It looks like just this fluid flow, right? It's not like right? So again, that comes with time, and that's absolutely acceptable. She is hitting her marks. I can tell that she's really trying to hit her marks. Now, what would be better is, as time progresses, to blend those steps into grayscale as opposed to black and white jerky steps. But again, very new and absolutely acceptable as to what is happening, because she has a great foundation on where she wants to be at and has the idea of repeatability. So let's get more into the form stuff. So things that I am noticing is she definitely has a tendency to blink when she lets go. So as you see here, she's eyes are open, and as she lets go, right as she's letting go, she closes her eyes. Now, it would be best to maintain eye focus where she is aiming, where she wants that arrow to go, or point of aim, whatever it is. She's shooting barebow here, so she might be looking at the bottom of the gold, basically, or the bottom of the center of the target. So maintaining eye focus is really critical to high-level scores, especially when it comes to the wind and shooting field archery, shooting different angles. Her goal, basically, and my goal with barebow, we just want to go shoot some field archery tournaments and not miss. Like that's our goal. We want to have some fun and not be searching for arrows in tick land, or in Florida, spider land. So basically, we just that's the goal, and this would lend itself to a lot more accuracy if this was not happening. That blink, right, and you can see it's happening before she's letting go. Now, there was a couple shots that day where I remember her telling me that the string was whacking her nose as she let go. So that could be why she was blinking, because that's, again, fifth time shooting. And we hadn't shot for like a month, basically, since the last time, so it might as well be brand new to her. So that's all to be expected. But some other things that I do see, the hand position's in a great spot. The wrist is an elbow is in a great spot. She's doing her best to push pressure low, even with a high-risk grip and the string crawling going on. Her anchor is very similar to mine, and it's very solid. You can see her cheek bulging over her hand, so that means she's pushing nice and hard into her face, which is a good thing I like to see. And one thing that I am seeing from this view, if you use my cursor, I'm going to do my best to keep it up here. It likes to go away when it sits still. But as I go frame by frame forward, you can see right before release, see that from here to there. You can see the elbow moving forward right as she's releasing. So she's doing a bit of a collapse here. But you can see as she releases, she's got a good idea as to what her finished position should be or where she wants it to be. She wants to run out of room with her scapula, like I've described. But there's a bit of a tendency in this shot that I'm seeing with that collapse. I think some of it has to do with the eye focus. Overall, there's pretty good hip control, and then you can see from this view setting her hips and looks very mechanical. Again, very new. But the overall position is good. The follow-through is good, with the exception of same thing from this angle. At full draw, here's my cursor. You can use the picnic table here in the background. And as I arrow forward, creeping, let go. So that has to do with a mental thing. I know why she is having it, but what I would suggest to someone is for them to not worry so much about the aiming. Don't focus so much on where the arrow is in relation to the center of the target. Don't worry necessarily so much about where the aiming is. What should be the primary focus, especially with bare bow because we have no clicker, is to continue adding just a little bit of pressure. Just add a teeny tiny little bit, because I believe that if you just try to maintain, it's not enough, because the bow is constantly trying to pull us forward. So as she's trying to, or as she should be, pulling through and adding a little bit of tension, instead she's saying, okay, just hold, right? Or what I see is just a tendency to just hold still, and then switches to focus on the target, and then the bow pulls you forward, and then this two-stage release happens where there's this and then the finished position where she wants to be. So what I would suggest is just adding a little bit more tension around and behind you. Again, I am exaggerating. It should not be visible. It should be an invisible movement. It should be at 100th of the speed that you pull the bow back. It should be invisible. I should not be able to see it. But adding a little bit of pressure is better than losing any pressure, because as you're losing, you'll have that tendency to collapse or to creep, or things that are not good in archery at all. So that would help a lot. Just the perspective, or the main focus of that. So again, in this position, this view, remember I talked about how the shoulder was being depressed too much, being pushed into the grip, and then that wrist being bent in because the arrow is probably pointing towards the target. Well, actually the arrow is pointing to the right of the target instead of pointing to the left. So you can see that wrist being bent in here, and the shoulder being depressed down. So it's not only depressed down, but she's also leaning forward this way then, because of that over exaggeration. She's trying to drop her chest and set her hips and all these things. Again, new archer, absolutely acceptable, working on it. This is just things to keep in mind, is don't point the arrow to the right side of the target. Again, I'm a right-handed shooter, so reverse these if you're a left-handed shooter. If you want to point the arrow to the right of the target, or to the left of the target, so then your wrist is bent this way. If you're pointing to the right of the target, your wrist will bend this way, or if it's pointing straight, your wrist will bend this way, and then you have this whole thing to recorrect. So if she started pointing to the left with that arrow, it'll allow her to bend her wrist this direction naturally and be there before she even gets to full draw. So again, she can feel if there's a slight change or a slight difference in the actual shot itself. So we'll go forward. The end position, again, looks pretty good. Something that she needs to work on is keeping the bow vertical. You can see she has a tendency to cant quite a bit. Again, new archer, lots of things going on, lots of things being focused, but that canting to the left is a big no-no. If anything, if there is any canting towards the right is okay. That's a strong position. A weak position is canting to the left. A lot of that just has to do with repetition. Pretty good. I'm a little bit too far this way with the camera. Ideally, I would want to try to get it in line with the arrow so then I could see where the elbow was in relation to the arrow at full draw. But you can see in this view, it's a little bit better. So her elbow is in line with the arrow here. It's good alignment at this point in the shot. But as I move forward, watch her lose it. Did you see that? So as she's at full draw in a good position, right? Once she first pulls the bow back, look how straight the bow is. Look how good the elbow alignment is. But as we move forward, she's losing it. Again, it just has to do with the perception and what is the main focus. The main focus needs to be on driving with the back half, increasing that tension, still moving around and behind your head, moving land to parallel to the shooting line. All the things that I've covered in my form series are things that I would advocate that need to happen here. So that way there's not so much focus on the actual aiming, and then there will not be this height variability in the impact point. Because if we're creeping different amounts, we're essentially changing our draw length longer to shorter, and we're changing the power that goes into that very light arrow. And over a long distance, your groups will, vertically shift and they won't be consistent. So that is something that definitely needs some work. But again, new, totally okay, acceptable, understandable. The end position is good. You can see she has a finish spot that she's fighting for. She's leading with her shoulder, and then that one creeped less. So that one probably had more power behind it and potentially hit higher on the target, if I had to guess. Again, this is an overhead view. You can see a lot of shifting going on. All new, all acceptable. Hips are relatively stable over the feet, which is good to see. She's using an open stance, so you can see the feet are open to the target and the hips are open to the target as well. Many people will have a tendency to close the hips and point the hips straight towards the target, which is not a good thing. It does not lend itself to stability. So keeping the hips over the feet is excellent. Overall, that canting, still the same thing. Leads with her land 2, really good. Gets in great position at full draw. But then as she starts aiming, she creeps a bit forward. And again, I've asked her and talked to her about it. What's going on there? And she says, oh, it's because I'm thinking about aiming at that point. And I start looking at that, and then I lose my focus on this. So there's your answer. Straightforward, easily understandable. Now, let's see how her shot looks from here. Creeping. So part of what I potentially suspected was a little bit of peeking going on. So as she's pulling and releasing, watch her head. Her head is moving as the fingers are opening. And then she gives a good look. Some of that could be because of the string hitting your nose, or who knows what, because I didn't ask her. So what I would suggest is, excuse me, I need to cough. Okay, I'm back. What I would suggest is to maintain that eye focus at the target. Don't look where that arrow is going yet. You don't want to be focused on where the arrow is going. Something that I actually just worked on somebody coaching here locally face-to-face was they had a tendency to want to peek to see where the arrow is going because they're like, oh, where did it go and how did that shot go? Because they were using the target as the primary focus and the primary tell of how that shot went, right? Instead of the correct way would be analyze internally how the shot went and then visually look at the target to see where the arrow landed, to see if you can start correlating a feeling with a result. Not necessarily seeing the result and then trying to correlate the feeling, because by the time that happens, you've already lost everything that happened in the shot. You don't have that time anymore. So you have to stay internally focused, think and feel about what's going on, how that shot actually went. Again, something that Coach Lee talked to me about was an honest archer makes a good archer. So you got to be honest with yourself and tell yourself, did that shot go as well as I could have shot it? Or was there room for improvement? And if there was, what do I need to improve upon? And then look and see where the arrow went. Because sometimes there's times when you shoot and the arrow doesn't go in the middle. It lands in the 8 ring, right? And it felt good, right? It felt great. Or at least nothing felt wrong with it. And then you see the result and the 8's low right. You're like, that's odd. It's not where I wanted it to go. It's not where it felt like it should have went. But I know that typically when I collapse and I pluck, I land low right, just enough. So then maybe you were a little soft on that shot, a little soft on that finish. So what I would suggest is, if you didn't feel anything wrong, but the result lended itself to say maybe you collapsed on that shot, well then make sure the next shot you shoot a very good, strong finishing shot. So that's something that I would be careful of, is making sure there's not this peaking going on. Yeah, and again, at this point for her, the best thing would be just get in volumes of arrows. Just do this some more, have some fun. This will all come second nature, and there'll be a lot less mechanical movements going on. But again, very new archer, acceptable, and definitely okay. But for sure, I focus on the target, maintaining the angling of the arrow to the left of the target to start in the proper position. Don't over exaggerate the dip. Maintain that tension and the focus on the finish, and really just work on driving that arrow home. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider hitting the like button, the subscription button, and the notification bell. And if you're interested in supporting my channel, head to my website, jkaminski.com, where you can find information on Patreon, apparel, books, and digital coaching as well.